Hey, hello there. This is Ben with Stewed on the Lake. So here's a dragon everybody was so interested in. I was messing around, got tired of doing other stuff. It was raining, couldn't do the chainsaw stuff, so I started a dragon. And this is where I've got him. I'm thinking he might be a lamp standing up staring up into the top of it. I might put a couple of gnomes and various different things. But here's part one of probably two or three when I get done messing around. So I just put a cameo of this guy in one of the last videos, and he received a lot of comments. So I've done a lot of dragons in the past. There's three or four of them that got burned up in the studio because unfortunately they were sitting up in the rafters. My favorite one that I hadn't repaired, in one of the future videos of this I'll show you. I had some parts of it. It was broken. I did him while I was in Iraq, and it was a dragon with a fairy. So here's how it all starts. A little kind of marking the head out on a piece of basswood that is coming off that. The bandsaw's in. I've been playing around, been cutting wood for Jordy and a couple other people I won't mention because they don't know that they're getting them. So there's the rough. This is kind of my standard dragon. I'm not really inventing this as it goes along, although the head shape is a basic dragon I like to do. Kind of like the hummingbirds and the various different birds. I have a pattern. I've done probably 30 dragons over the years, and they have mixed reviews. I've done little dragons, and there's some videos in there. If you're not a subscriber, I suggest you do that, and then you can get access to all the videos. So I started out just kind of roughing out his nose. You can see I left a lot of material on the front there for his nostrils. I like him to have big nostrils. The dust collector was supposed to be here a couple days ago, and it's still on back order. And I will put a whole series on that because I'm putting together a pretty nice dust collecting system, and you'll see that. I owe you 3 or 4 videos. I've been doing weird projects. I've got a bear that turned into a raccoon. There's a silly owl that I've been working on. I've got a video about edited up on feathers and how I do the feathers. So you saw I took the basic outline there. Now that's where his snout's going to go, and centering lines. So if you're new to the channel, you know that I'm a big fan of centering lines. When we start carving, we start off with a square. And if you're a new carver, you're going to be a little bit afraid to cut too many lines down, take too much wood off, because carving is subtractive. You take away. It's not like in clay, where if you mess up, you can knead up another piece of clay and put it on there. So these center lines kind of give me the flow of where things are going, and then it also tells me that I can just about take everything between a top center line and a side center line down. And you can see here I'm delineating down through the middle of the snout. So that V groove that was cut in there is going to leave, the center of that is really going to kind of be the center of his snout. And what I'm cutting across on the end there is leaving the nostrils. And this is pure imagination. I don't have a pattern, but I have done quite a few of these. So I've got a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. As soon as I get the majority of the shape in there, the first thing I'm going to try to get in there is the eyes. And you can see with the pen there, the blue, that I did do a little bit of the eye, kind of where I think the eye is going to go. And dragons in my book, they have to have red eyes. So they're the same eyes that I use for the big loons on that. Now that's a saber burr. It's in the Oz carver, and it's running. I run it about 40,000. It will go to 50,000. It's kind of like, it's very similar to a Kutzall, medium Kutzall, not an extreme. I don't use the extremes because they're a little hard on these smaller hand pieces. There's a review on this hand piece, and I like it, although it's like an $850 hand piece. It still does get a little warm after a half an hour of working with it. I don't think they were designed for what we're doing with them here. So this one I run a 3/32 call it in, and at some point I will do just a video on the burrs because they seem to be fairly popular. So I'm working down the snout. So the channel's doing real well, and that's thanks to all you guys. I still haven't found a person to build the studio, so I'm going to end up doing that myself. I intended last week to start clearing out the burned out stuff and what was salvageable in there. I've got some tools and lathes and that sort of thing that I need to find in the cinders, and then get the building tore down to the ground so I can get the foundation in before the winter comes up here in northern Wisconsin. This week I'm back down in Iowa for 3 or 4 more days, and I've just been lazy on putting out videos, so I apologize for that. But I'm starting to work down around where his cheeks are. He will get ears on that. You won't see that in this video. I left this a little long and a lot of information in here so you can see where I'm going with these dragons. And this one, when we get to it, I normally put scales and sort of things on his head, and I kind of went with a feather scale approach. So you see, I'm coming around and around on this, and if you don't have a power carver, you can definitely do this all by itself with a knife or with chisels. And you can see that dust starting to build up. I've got, like I said, a pretty cool idea for the dust collector. I'm going to build it into the sides of the chair. My old chair still has a good base. It's going to need recovered, so I thought when I did that, where the arms are on it, I'm going to put the dust collector inside of that, since, as you guys know, I like to sit on my butt and carve. And you'll see occasionally that's me blowing the dust off there. I'm sure that's not good for you. I've never been allergic to dust, but some of it is a little bit annoying. The basswood's not bad. Cedar is a little bit more annoying when you're carving cedar. And certainly that cottonwood bark that, thank you, Jordy, I get from Jordy up in Canada there. That's got kind of an annoying dust to it. But you can see I'm running this 2 times the speed. That's my standard if you're just joining the channel or just looking at it. I'll run some stuff that you don't need to see at 2 times the speed, and then when it's, I think it's important, and that's totally subjective, I will come down. So there's an eye. I think that's a 12 millimeter, maybe a 13 millimeter, or even a 14. I don't know. I'm guessing probably that's a 12, and that's about where I think I'm going to want it to go. So I'm going to put the center lines back on this bad boy, and then I'm going to start setting in the eye channel. Now I know I want him to have kind of a little skull cap up above, and then below that I want an eye ridge that's pronounced. Dragons are supposed to be, in my brain anyway, a little bit more on the evil side. So I've got enough room here, and this is kind of where the eye ridge is going to go. Or I think it's going to go. That's what I'm working. Now everything on these, the left and right side of the face, is going to come down to a V on the top of his snout. And everything will flow down through the snout. If he were a bird, that would be a bill, I guess. And you can see I'm peeking at both sides and trying to get it symmetrical. So I was looking at the channel, like I said, is growing just fine. I've been trying to figure out why one spoon carving video will get 1 million views in 2 weeks, or one carving video will get 1 million views in 2 or 3 months. And I think my best one's at 40 or 50,000. So nothing's really caught on to go crazy, and I don't get it. I've come up with a new term. It's kind of fun. I was watching some of the builder shows and a couple of things that I follow. And here's what I've come up with. I think it's YouTube porn. So if you've got a butt and you've got boobs and you put anything out there, it's good for 500,000, 1 million views with you doing nothing but sticking your butt out and wearing a flimsy t-shirt. So if I had a cute butt, which I don't, and if I had boobs, which I don't, this channel would be making enough. I'd be retired. Right now, it'd be pulling in 20 grand a month, and I guess you're just going to have to resign to the fact in life that I don't have either of those assets, and I'm just going to have to work on on what we got going here. So I thought that's kind of interesting, but I call it YouTube porn, and try to figure things out, what's going on around the world, and the only thing I can think of is teenagers maybe, or men who can't get caught watching regular porn, can get away with watching some girl living in the wilderness or living in their camper or living in a Bronco. There's that one out there, and I won't give them to you. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. They can get away with that without their wife getting on their case. So, unfortunately, we don't have that. So you're just going to have carving here. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So you can see I put the little cap on the top of his head there. I'm still using that taper saber burr. I've got a couple of Kutzall burrs that I like. They're Kutzall mediums. There's a silver, which is supposedly the medium, not the extreme. And then there's a gold, which is a little bit finer. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two of them. But my issue lately has been they're $15 a piece, give or take. And my issue lately is the last 3 or 4 that I've got have been slightly off balance. And if anyone from Kutzall is looking at this, I'm not picking on it on your product. I've used Kutzalls for years. It's just that it's annoying when I buy them in sets of 2 typically, and I'll buy $100 worth of bits at a time. And to have 2 or 3 of them right out of the box not be true is a little bit annoying. So I don't know if something's going on with Kutzall. The COVID maybe has broken down their quality control process or something. And I've been tempted to write them, and I'm sure they would make good on it, but I just haven't had the time, and I forget about it. So lately I've been using saber-tooth burrs, more than the Kutzalls, and that just has to do with what I talked about, the quality issue in the last 4 or 5 bits that I've gotten from those guys. So I'm kind of going down underneath there, and I'm trying to leave a ridge, and then I'm going to put part of the eyeball, maybe a third of it, if that, a third or a quarter of the eyeball is going to go up inside underneath that ridge that I just put in there. At least that's the intent. And there we go. And you can see I'm trying to figure out kind of where I want that eye to set. And then there's what I'm showing you. I'm going to put it across so that I can put both those in. I've talked on the birds. A good way to do this, if you don't have a lot of experience, it's hard to get the left and right eye centered as you turn the piece around. And a way to do that is to get a couple of push pins and put them in put one on this side and then put one on the other side and turn this thing around, kind of like I'm doing now, until you get both of those push pins reading correctly. Otherwise, you're going to have one, what I call wonky eyes. Now you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of coming up inside of there. And again, that's a saber burr. That's kind of a taper, fairly steep taper. And I'm cutting just the eye socket out. And I'm trying to come, not mess with the eyelid, but leave it, get enough material in there that I can slip that eye up under that a little bit. And I'm still using the one, the Oz Plus. I do have a iCube carver that is about half or a third the price of this one, and it sits over there, and I like it quite a bit. The handpiece is a little bulky. This has got a nice handpiece on it, this Oz, and I run both of them out. You guys know I like to run 2. I run 1/8" bits, shaft bits in the RAM iCube, and then in this Oz I use it. You see I got that up underneath the eyelid a little bit in there. So I'm real happy with that. Now, before I put that in, since I don't want to catch the eye with these, this is a little ruby bit. This is a smaller ruby bit, and it's the small taper. I like the big taper and the small taper, and you'll see I do a lot of it with this small taper. I only have one of these. I ordered a couple more, and I learned something on these that I've never learned before. This particular one that I've got here, at some point here in the next day or two, which you don't get to see, it was a little bit gummed up, and I was wondering, since it's a ruby or a diamond, if I could get away with cleaning it with a brick. And those of you that have done construction and that sort of thing, if you've got a tile cutter or a cement cutter, that's quick wood, epoxy 2-part mix, and I'm mixing that up. You've seen me do that before. That's what I use to set the eyes. It dries in about 10 or 15 minutes. It gives you time to work. But anyway, if you've got a tile cutter and it gets a little bunged up, it's got a diamond blade on it typically, and the way to sharpen it, and the old lapidary folks know the same thing. You would take a brick, and for some reason the ceramic in the brick or the content in the brick will clean that diamond blade right off. I did that with this little bit that I was playing around with there just a minute ago, that ruby bit. I got to tell you, bad idea. Didn't work. What it did, apparently the ruby material or the sapphire material is not embedded any deeper than on the surface. Because I took that off, it cleaned it up real nice, and man, it's a burnisher now. It's got absolutely zero cutting power. So I don't recommend that. Brass brush is probably the way to go with those. Okay, so you see, I'm using that knife that I've used for years. This is a homemade knife with a homemade handle, and I'm pulling off that quick wood. I'm going to leave just a small piece around the corner. You see, I'm kind of staying away from some of that and leaving a little bit. I'm going to leave a little bit of it around the eye there. Then I'm going to push that eye in just a hair, and I'm going to use that to make the eyelids and that sort of stuff. And you'll get to see that in a minute. So there's that ridge that I'm working with, and there's the pushing the eye in just a hair. What that does is it makes the epoxy or the quick wood roll out, and it rolls out consistently. So it does a nice job. And now you see I'm kind of filling in up along the top there. And now I'm going to come back and put in those eyelid little indentations, and that's what I'm doing right there. Sometimes I'll use the front of the knife, other times I'll use the back of the knife. But that's going to read real well when it gets painted. So I wish I'd have zoomed in just a little bit more, and you could see what I'm doing with this eye. Now, if your eye is not set deep enough, you can go back and you can put another roll, little thin spaghetti-like pieces off of this quick wood, and then lay them in there and sculpt it around the eye. That works just fine. I'll do that on a lot of the birds where they have an intricate eyelid or an intricate part of it covering the eye. But I love this stuff, and I keep 2 tubes of it around the quick wood. And you have to used to have to special order it. Now every hardware store has it, and I don't remember the cost, $5, $8, something like that. As with most projects, to me, it comes alive once you get the eyes in there, and I like to use the glass eyes. These are Tohican glass eyes. That's the only place I order them from. And they are a bit pricey. I think these are $4 or $5 an eye. That quick wood has dried, and I'm back to that little fine ruby bit, and I think that one's $12. I ordered another. Like I said, I took all the ruby off of this one, and it's nothing but a burnishing tool now. So it may or may not have use in the future. I'll let you know how that works out. I've got enough crappy bits that will burn or burnish, so I really don't need any more of them. I guess I lied to you. That quick wood is not dry, or I wouldn't have pulled the knife out and put that in there. So in an eye channel, obviously he's got to see. In a bird, you'll do the same thing. You'll put a channel to the front of his eye, because their eyes are in the sides of their head, and you want him to see. So I figured this guy was kind of going to be decorative, and at this point I decided, as opposed to doing scales, fish scales or dragon scales as the case, I would do kind of a feather looking thing. And you see right here, I'm starting to cut those in. That's where that taper comes in really nicely. It does a nice groove. And I'm liking what he's got going here. I probably should have put some lines in, some flow lines in, so you can see what's going on. But basically the lines in the back of his head, back of the eyeball, are going to go towards the back of the head. And as they start to go down the neck, they're going to start curving downward. And if you put those reference lines in with a pencil or a pen, you know what you're doing. It's easy to get lost when you're playing around with the burr or the carving and go in the wrong general direction. And you can see I'm kind of doing this without reference lines, and it turns out just fine, because I've done quite a few of these. Now at some point up here towards the front of this guy, those lines are going to need to transition to the snout, and you can see in the eye there where that starts to do that. So I thought the eye socket needed to be a little bit deeper and flow out of there. So at this point they're starting to go down in, and I'm going to kind of stay away a little bit, because there's going to be a point where the upper part of the snout and the bottom part of the snout opens up for the mouth, for lack of better reference, and those would go in slightly different directions. But you can kind of see what I'm going for, and I like it here. A lot of times I'll do squares and diamonds and that sort of thing across the top of the snout, which gives that dragon the look that we're going for. And over the top of that eye, looking at it now, I would that eyebrow or eye ridge would be a little bit more pronounced, and that's what I'm starting to fix here. And then it would come down a little bit right about there to the front. There's a lot of fat material there. I just took part of that out. So I was staring at that and thinking that needed to come down just a little bit to read correctly. So when you're carving, whether it's a knife, a chainsaw, sanding, however you're managing to pull this off, or a power carver, if you can, turn the piece around and around. Obviously, if you're doing chainsaw carving, you're going to be standing next to it, but I think you want to walk around it, and you want to work on all the different sides at one time. In this case, I'm breaking that rule. I got him symmetrical, the blank symmetrical, and I'm going to work this one side, and then I will come back and work the second side and duplicate the two of these. He will get 2 ears or flaps back behind there, and I know that, and that's why I'm kind of staying away from the backside. They're going to go right about where I stuck my thumb just a second ago. So here I'm starting to set up the other side and keep things symmetrical. And I decided to do that same feather beard flow, whatever pattern. It's kind of the same pattern I would use if I were making a beard or hair. Although this will get painted just a little bit differently to delineate those. And once again, I should have drawn reference lines on there just so you can see it. I highly recommend it. I obviously didn't do it here. I was getting lazy or something. You can see that pretty much everything on this guy is starting to taper down towards the snout. And then up on the front of him there, the nostrils are going to be pretty big and flared towards the front. And then along the side, I'm going to have to cut the jawline in at some point. And I did do this because I was doing other things, I was bored. I have started the Raven. My son still has not brought the other Raven up, and I kind of wanted that to do as a comparison. But those of you that have been waiting for the Raven, I have started it, and I'll put a cameo of that probably in one of these videos this week that I'm posting. And like I said, I've got 3 or 4 that I should get posted. And I've got a couple from 2 or 3 weeks ago that I just haven't got around to finishing the editing on. So summer is a bad time for time because there's stuff going on. The grandkids. We had a family reunion a week ago at the in-laws lake just south of us, an hour south of us, and that took up 3 days out of the 5 days that I had. And then there is work to do around the lakefront and out at the garden, messing with the bees and that sort of stuff. So summer's not a good time for carving and then having time to edit the videos. Those of you that do this sort of stuff know that it takes just as long probably to edit a video as it does to carve the video. And that's not necessarily true. I probably put an hour and a half into editing and doing the voiceover, whereas I will put 4 or 5 hours probably into the carving that went into that. So I'm starting to put his jaw in there, and already he's got that attitude coming out. You got his eye kind of down in the corner there, and then he's got this evil-looking grin going on. I'm just rounding the bottom of that snout over. And you can see as you look at the profile, I've got a little bit of extra material on the bottom underneath there that's going to come off, but not a whole lot. And that's the depth that I wanted to see in there. So his bottom lip, if you think about it, or bottom jaw, is going to be kind of hollow towards the front and then taper back in just like a neck would. Since nobody's seen a dragon, in modern times at least, you're at the mercy of the artists. So many artists have different interpretations. These dragons can be cute. If you go to the kids' cartoons, they get a little bit ludicrous with some of their angles and planes. And then nobody can agree on whether they have 4 limbs, 2 legs, 2 arms, and 2 wings, or if they just have 2 legs and 2 wings. This guy, when I put him together, they have 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 wings. And I don't know if that's right. That's like someone telling you what a unicorn's supposed to look like. We know a unicorn is a horse. It's got a goofy horn in the middle of it like a rhinoceros. And obviously he's going to have all kinds of magical talents, that sort of stuff. But when I'm messing around, I typically do a dragon, a spoon, or a baby bird. So if I'm bored with what I'm carving, or just not really feeling a project that I'm working on, or I need to think about it, I'll do a dragon, a baby bird, or probably a spoon. So they were kind of, we've got the jawline in there. So now I can go ahead and put the flat part up there on the top of his nose. I can see where, you can see where the nostrils would flare out, and at some point right here, I'm going to go ahead and cut the nostril into that. And you can see I left, again, squares. So when you're carving, you start off in a block form, and then you'll come and go to round. And the way you do that is take those blocks and you divide them out, and you make them, you start rounding over the corners. All right, so there's the nostrils, or nostril, one singular, and I kind of figured it was a big hole. Putting it in there, and I guess I'm not going to show you. Maybe I will. But anyway, so we're coming to the end of it. This one is 30 minutes long plus, and I don't want to bore anybody. I did put it on I have gone a little further. I put ears in, I put it on the body, and I've done some other carving, started carving the body, and I'll take you all the way through that. It'll probably be 3 videos, and we'll even paint this. This will have some neat stuff on it, the scales. And like I said, I think he's going to be a lamp, and he's going to be looking up into the lamp. I might even do an orb on the top of it. I'm not sure. I haven't decided that part out. The problem with these things is they're kind of fragile with the different pieces, and they sit around and whatnot. But they are fun to build. So there he is. I've got his head up in the corner there. That's the body that I'm starting to work on. And you'll get to see the rest of this bad boy in a future video. So if you haven't, by all means, comment and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to see the rest of them, costs nothing to subscribe. And thanks a lot. This has been Ben with Studio on the Lake.